Hey all you addicts out there, welcome back to another Addicted Fishing tutorial. My name is Jordan Knigge, and today we're out here on the lake, we're looking for trout, and we're talking about how to fly fish for big trophy trout with wet flies, and in particular woolly buggers and leeches. So if you guys want to learn more about how to fly fish and catch some of these awesome big rainbow trout, stay tuned, it's coming at you right now. So before we get this kicked off today, if you guys are new to this channel, I want you to go down here and hit that little subscribe button and hit that little bell notification. We're Addicted Fishing, and if you guys have never seen our channel before, we do all kinds of educational, inspirational, entertaining content all over the world. And today this is a more educational piece, again, on how to fly fish. So if you guys want to see more, hit that little subscribe button and tune in for more of this awesome content that comes at you every day. The first thing I'm going to start talking about here today is the rod selection. If you're going to be fly fishing in a lake and you're going to be either fishing from the bank or from a kayak or a canoe or a boat, you're going to want a little bit longer fly rod. I like anywhere in between a 4-weight to a 6-weight fly rod for this. That way if you do catch smaller fish, it's a lot of fun, but you have enough backbone to catch those bigger trout like we're targeting here today. So this is a 10-foot 6-weight rod, one of my favorite. Any make really works. You know, if you want to go to the local fly shop, you can get the higher end rods, you can get the lower end rods. One of my favorite makes is Okuma. The Okuma Nomad rod is a cool one. It has a nice little case. It breaks down in two and you can take it all over with you and fish anywhere you want for these trout. So I have just a normal trout floating line on here, nothing special, with a size 5-weight reel on this. And this is pretty much your ideal setup for any kind of dry fly or wet fly fishing. Again, go to your local fly shop, tell them where and what you're going to be fishing for, and they'll be able to get you into a rod that best suits you and what you're actually going out to catch. So moving along down the line, I have about, what I have here is just a little loop knot on the end of my fly line. I have about an 8 to a 9-foot leader. Your leader length is crucial in casting these bigger wet flies, because the longer leader that you have, the harder and harder it is for you to cast these wet fly presentations. Because the thing about a wet fly is, contrary to a dry fly, is it's heavy, and it takes a lot better casting form, and it takes better movement with your rod tip to cast that line, rather than having that light, you know, aerodynamic, small dry fly that flies through the air well, and that makes it easier for you to cast. So this is a harder attribute. So I'm gonna go with no more than about a 10-foot leader on here. I have a 10-pound fluorocarbon on this. You can go lighter, you can go down to your 4 pounds, but really you wanna stay with a little bit heavier line if you're going for these big fish, because you never know what's gonna grab the end of your rod. What I did here is a little bit of a cheap end of it. You can either use, because we want to be down and deep in the strike zone here today, we want to use something like a weighted line, like a T10 weighted line, which would be just a tip that you could add to your fly line, or you can get fly lines that have built-in weight into the head of the fly line so that it sinks by itself. Again, talk to your local fly shop. They'll get you set up with the right thing that you need. All I did today, I went pretty cheap on it. All I did was I added a number 5 split shot right above my loop knot that I connected that to my fly line, and I have about 9 feet a leader, go about 6, 7, 8, 9, down to just a black tungsten headed woolly bugger. And this is kind of your classic woolly bugger style. A lot of the original woolly buggers are going to have no lead head on them, so you can add weight in a weighted line, but I like the ones with the weighted head, and I like to get a few different colors. So as I talked about in the beginning of this, talking about woolly buggers and leeches, the two differences in between those two is what they're tied with. Woolly bugger is feathers and schloppen, which is a different kind of tying feather. And then what I would call a leech pattern is going to be made with rabbit fur. And that's going to have a different movement in the water. It's going to sink faster, and it's all around going to be a different presentation. As you can see, this is an articulated leech pattern, big lead head on it so it can get down, and a nice rabbit fur tail. So it has a lot of nice motion, and these are just basically emulating two different kind of bugs that would be in a natural lake like this. So this is emulating an actual leech, and this is really going to look like a scud or some sort of stonefly or something that's actually going to be getting fed on in this lake throughout the year by these big trout that are living here. So that's your typical setup. Having a good variation of colors of flies. I just have the basic olive, black, you know, I have a nice tan or a lighter peachy color, and then another black leech. And this is simple. They make hundreds of variations of this fly. So depending on where you're fishing, if you want to try multiple colors, the key would be to just have different stuff, have different shades to match the different watercolor. And then it's going to make you more successful that way. So now what we're going to do, we're going to stand up. I'm going to show you guys a little bit of a casting tutorial, and then we're actually going to try to put some time in this hole and actually catch a fish to show you guys how well these little woolly buggers work. So the two different casts that you can use to cast this heavy setup is either a roll cast or a double haul cast. One of my favorite ways to do it is a little combination of both. So your typical fly cast, just as a normal beginner is gonna start, what I like to do, just to get the motion down, you let about 10 feet of line out, about the same amount of line that you have about as long as your rod itself. And what I want you to immediately practice doing is how an old friend explained it to me. You're gonna imagine you're using an old-time telephone that's on the wall. Pretend it's on the wall at eye level, and you're gonna answer that phone and you're gonna hang it up. And the biggest key to making this cast properly is to keep that wrist locked. If you could place a 2x4 and tape it to your arm and make it stay stiff the entire time, that's what's gonna allow you to cast this the best, or any fly cast the best. You wanna keep that wrist nice and stiff. You wanna do it answering the phone and hanging up. And when you come to that top part of your cast, you want to pause your rod tip so that the line flies behind you, lays out completely, and as you go forward, you have all that weight of that line behind you to load your rod and cast it forward. So the key is, again, is to stay high in your form, stay in your casting box, and answer the phone and hang it up. And if you need to, the best way to do this as to start is watch behind you to where your line will actually straighten out. So the key with that back cast is to let all that line straighten out behind you before you make your cast forward. As you can see here, I let all that line straighten out to where that fly actually goes to its fullest distance away, straightens out, and then I continue my cast forward, keeping my wrist stiff and pushing it forward towards the water. The nice part about this setup is you do not mind it getting wet. So when I do that, I can actually use the water as my advantage. I'm gonna lay that line down and I'm gonna use that to load my rod and cast that forward. And distance is key with this because you're gonna be stripping this fly back in. So a lot of times I'll either use the haul cast like I just showed you, or I'll use a roll cast to get this out there. So a roll cast consists of this. You have about 15-20 feet on the water, and this is normally the cast I'll use after I've already been fishing and my line's coming back in. Is I'll lift my rod tip to 12 o'clock, lay the line down next to me on the water, leave about 10 to 15 feet on the water, and continue that cast forward. And the thing about a roll cast is it almost always takes two. So if that first cast doesn't work, do the exact same motion over again, back to 12 o'clock, slowly forward, and let that line fly out. And that's how I'll start my cast. So when I bring it back in, I'll be stripping. We'll talk about the stripping here in a second. I'll strip it back in, just like so. I'll lift my line up. I'll actually let line go out of my hand onto the water, roll cast once, create my haul back up over me, let it straighten out, and then I'll throw it all the way out. And that's where I'll get my max distance every time, is because I'm getting the max amount of load out of my rod here. So I'm gonna do one more cast, get that a little further. And the casting's something you guys are gonna have to get over time. We'll do some more tutorials, so stay tuned for that on how to really properly cast and a little more of the dynamic of how to cast. But today, we're talking more about how to actually catch the fish here with these woolly buggers. So I'm gonna get a couple roll casts and a big haul, get a little bit of line out there. And I'm gonna go into how we're actually gonna wanna bring this back in, just like so. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna give it about a 5 count or so, let that split shot and that fly sink towards the bottom. And my repetitions on my strips are gonna be, subtle to quick. I'm gonna do quick little jerks, like 1, 2, 3, and then I'll let it fall for 2 seconds. And then I'll do 4 strips back in, and then I'll let it fall again. And so what you're trying to emulate, as you guys could imagine in your minds, is just a little insect or bug that's in the water that these fish are feeding on, swimming along and then sinking, and then swimming along and then sinking. So they see that movement catches their eye, and then as it starts to sink, it gives them that opportunity to swim over and actually hit your fly. So you can come up with your own repetition. Some days they might want a really fast strip, some days they might want a really slow strip, some days I'll cast out and just let it sit there and the fish will swim over and grab it. So it's just gonna depend on where you're fishing and what kind of water quality you have. Today we have some pretty dirty water. We're at this freshwater inlet where these fish are coming into for this clean water, and the insects that are probably getting flushed into the river or into the lake. And so we are gonna use a little bit slower strip so that those fish are gonna get time to actually see that fly. And the way I like to dissect any hole as I start to fish is I start counterclockwise, but I start as far left as I can in my situation, depending on if I'm stuck on the bank or I have the fortunality of a dock like this or a boat, and I'm gonna work clockwise across. So I'm gonna start my cast over here to the left, start slowly working them across, and then eventually be casting out into the middle of the lake, and then I might change flies and do the exact same motion again. So that way you're kind of mathematically breaking down the hole and covering all that water that you might have fish in. There he is, there he is, there he is, there he is. Oh my God, oh yeah. Oh yeah, dude. Oh yeah. That's a monster. Oh my God, it came off. Oh my God. All right, everybody, so there it was. You all got to witness it. That was about a 10-pound trout, but they love these woolly buggers like this. And so what I had done there, that thing had been falling consistently all the way down. I made a couple of strips and then instantly that fish came and grabbed it. So kind of a testament to what we're talking about here, where you want to get it in front of those fish, you want to let it sink down in front of them, and then you want to give them time to see it when the water's murky like this. Okay, so we gave that fly about 15 minutes or so. Got that one really nice bite on it. So all I'm gonna do now, just so that I've covered, took about 15-20 minutes. I covered it clockwise as much as I could, about 300 degrees. Now I'm just gonna switch over to the olive fly, give it about another 15 minutes, and maybe change location and work my way around this little cove where these fish seem to be. And then I'll switch to even a different presentation after that. So for right now, I'm gonna go just to this olive color here and give her a shot and see what happens. There he is. Oh, that was huge, dude, he's still shaking. Broke the fly off. Broke the fly. Well, the color change worked, everybody. We went to an olive color. And he broke my leader way at the top of it. So you can see kind of why we used a little bit heavier line. Granted, this is kind of a unique situation where we have such big fish in this little hole like this, but just like that, I got a little nick on my cast, maybe even had a little wind knot, and that thing broke off. So be sure to check over your line as you fish and you start to catch fish and you start getting snagged in the bushes. It's always good to recheck it, or else you'll end up losing a giant trophy trout just like I just did. So that was a heartbreaker, but we got more of that fly and we got more time. So let's get back in there and catch this one. Bad luck today. Sometimes all it takes is a little bit of luck, you guys. And getting some good opportunities, hooking some big fish. But the hook set is really important. It's one thing I want to stress. When we're on that one, I might have done it a little too hard, considering what happened on the first setup, where I didn't know if I got that hook good enough into him. But I set the hook pretty hard as he took it, and as he made his first head shake, there was obviously something fouled up in that line, and he broke that line instantly. But the hook set that you want to use is more of a strip set. When you feel that tension come to that line when you pull it in, all you're going to do is pull, keep your rod tip basically right about nose height, and set that rod tip up only about a quarter of the way. That way you don't swing too much and set the hook too hard and either pull the hook out of his mouth or break your line like I just did. There he was again. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I keep yanking it out of their mouth. Driving me nuts. At least it's not hooking them and scaring them away. So the cool part about it is, you guys, normally if you do get those strikes like that, what's happening is as I'm stripping, as I go to make my next strip, I'm feeling that tug and that pull back. And what that's telling me is that fish is grabbing it, but just grabbing it lightly, and I'm not getting that full hook set. But as long as you're not stinging those fish, and sometimes with an aggressive trout, you can keep casting over that same fish, and as long as he's still aggressive and you haven't scared him, he'll go ahead and bite again. But I keep getting little bites here and it's driving me nuts. But we want to put a fish on the dock for you guys here so that you can see how well these flies work. Here in another 10-15 minutes, again, I'll go ahead and switch to one of the leech patterns and do another variation of 300-degree casting and see if I can get them to eat something else. Okay, everybody, now we've kind of ran through our, kind of expended through the amount of flies that we have. We're gonna start going back to the colors that we've already tried. The leech pattern obviously was not working. We're seeing them jump right here in front of us. So I'm gonna tie the black bugger on here, put the olive one on my hat, and I'm gonna change locations for a second here and see if we can't get another fish further back into this little cove. So all this spot is that we're fishing, and it's a really good way to find trout in the spring on any lake, is a lot of these fish, whether they're hatchery fish or not, a lot of the hatchery fish in any area of the country that you're at are going to be sterile. So what they actually make them when they're in the embryo stage, when they're in their egg stage, they make them so that they can't spawn by exposing them to a UV light. So what that means is that fish still has reproductive organs, it still wants to spawn, but when it lays its eggs, nothing happens. The eggs lay down, they don't ever go back to actually creating other little baby fish. So, but all triploids, and if we're talking wild fish, they go into these creeks and these areas and then they actually spawn, but these triploids will actually come into this area. They go up into these freshwater coves and spawn in these little spots. So that can be a really cool way to get yourself on some really big fish in the spring, and some fish that you normally wouldn't see because they're out in the middle of the deepest part of the lake feeding throughout the rest of the year. Got him. See him? Yep, giant. He actually had the fly in his mouth. What a ripoff. No, I don't know where he went. All right, so we've relocated. We've gone to a little bit deeper end of the lake, kind of more out in the open. The wind calmed down a little bit. So we got out of that cove, and now we're going out towards the dam end of the lake, and we're gonna see what happens here. Got the olive fly back on, and we're gonna see if we can't make magic happen here. The bite has been pretty good today, but you know, I think what it has been, here he is. Something, oh. Bluegill. Freaked me out. Thought we had a big one. Turns out it was just a little bluegill. Cute little thing nonetheless. Let's get him back in there. Wrong species. There he is. Got him. Really nice one. Really nice one. Took that right at the bank. Oh, that's a really nice fresh one too. Uh-oh, panic mode. Got wrapped around my arbor. Look at that thing. Holy smokes, that's a big trout. Those big ones just really love these woolly buggers and these leeches. I think it's something that's gotta be, it's gotta be something about what they're naturally eating in these lakes. As you know, any angler is on the bank and looking into the water, you see a lot of these little stone flies, or just different, like they call them scuds, these different bugs that live in these lakes, and they're moving around the bank. And you know, even though these are stalker trout, they actually feed a lot on those scuds and those different things like that throughout the year so that they can survive. You know, some of these fish are actually can be 10, 12, 15 years old sometimes. You know, these stock trout, these triploids live a long time. So, oh man, but they're strong. What a fresh, beautiful fish, man. Oh, not yet. He wants to get us wet. That is how you catch fish, using wet flies, woolly buggers, and leeches. So I'm glad today we got to witness a little bit and share with you guys a little bit on the take and the bite, and kind of take you start to finish on how you should fish and what it takes to catch these beautiful trophy trout on woolly buggers and leech flies. Thank you so much, buddy. We'll see you later. All right, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in this week. We really hope that this helped you learn a little bit more about how to fly fish, and it gets you a little more excited to try something new and get out there and try throwing these woolly buggers at these leech patterns at these awesome, beautiful, big rainbow trout. If you guys like what you saw today, be sure to drop a comment below with whether or not you like fly fishing, or if you've ever done it before. And really, if you ever want to see us make more fly fishing content, because for me, it's one of my favorite ways to catch fish. If you haven't already, be sure to hit subscribe, hit that little bell notification so that you can see all the other trout tutorials coming out that we have every single day. You guys stay fishy. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you out there.